Hey guys, tonight I want to tell you something that's been sitting in my chest for years. It starts with three little dots. You know the ones, those ghostly gray ellipses that pop up when someone's typing you a message. I stare at them on my phone screen for what feels like a full minute. Then they disappear. Then they come back. Then nothing. This was me. About 6 months ago, staring at a message I had written but hadn't sent. The text said, "I love you." That's it. No emojis, no punctuation, just those 3 words, fragile and floating like they could snap if I pressed send. I didn't send it. I backspaced until all that was left was the blinking cursor, mocking me. Honestly, like it knew I wouldn't go through with it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing that. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let me take you into the heart of it all. My name's Rob. I'm 54. For most of my life, I've been a copywriter, which sounds cooler than it is. Mostly it's been typing words for other people. Ads, taglines, emails. I've gotten pretty good at saying things for others, but when it comes to saying things for me, for real I freeze. Especially when the words are honest. Especially when they matter. Especially when they're, "I love you." The story I'm going to share with you tonight isn't about one person. Exactly. It's about a pattern, a fear, a silence that kept showing up in all the rooms of my life. But if there's one person who made me realize it, who pressed the bruise hard enough to make me look, it's Claire. Claire and I never dated, never even kissed, but she was the first person I almost texted "I love you" to, fully meaning it, and also the last. She was warm, smart, wore thick scarves in the summer because she liked the feeling of them. Her laugh kind of creaked at the start, then cracked into something joyful. She said honestly before saying anything honest, which always made me smile. And we were close. Too close to be just friends. Not close enough to be lovers. One of those in-between things that you think will resolve itself until it just doesn't. One night, we're texting about this ridiculous dream I had where we were trapped inside a giant vending machine, trying to get out by solving snack-based puzzles. I'm laughing. She's laughing. I send a voice note doing my best robot vending machine impression, and she sends back hers. And then she says, "You know, I really do love you." Just like that. 13 words, like they were nothing, like they were everything, and I froze. I remember the exact angle of my ceiling fan, the hum of my refrigerator, the way my thumb hovered over the keyboard like I was trying to land a helicopter with it. I typed, "I love you too," then deleted it. Typed, same. Deleted. Typed, "wow." Deleted. And finally just sent a thumbs up emoji. The yellow one. The generic, sterile, plastic version of human connection. She replied, "Haha." Okay, that was it. We didn't talk much after that. I wish I could tell you we had a beautiful, teary moment where we cleared the air and told the truth and hugged and promised to never let silence win. But we didn't. What we had instead was a slow fade. A text every few weeks, then every few months, then just the occasional like on a story. Until the only trace of us was the fact that neither of us had deleted the thread. But that night, that pause, Those unsent words they've echoed through so many other moments. Moments when I could have spoken up and didn't. Moments when I told people what they wanted to hear instead of what I felt. And what's wild is I've said, I love you out loud. To partners, to family, to my old dog, Rudy, who probably understood it better than I did. But texting it, that felt different. Like it was frozen in time. Like it stayed on record. A spoken, I love you floats away. A typed one lingers. It waits. It sits on the screen like evidence, like commitment, like a dare. It's funny, when I was younger, I thought saying I love you would be the big step, the turning point, the romantic climax of a movie. But now, I realize that clicking send is the real leap. The moment you risk being misunderstood, ignored, or worst of all, unreciprocated. And maybe that's what I was really afraid of. Not the words themselves, but what I thought they demanded in return. So there I was, middle-aged, fully grown, beard graying at the chin, still stuck in the same emotional stutter I had at 17, still afraid to be the first one to say it, still backspacing love. The backseat of my first car smelled like old McDonald's fries and teenage fear. It was a navy blue Toyota Corolla, 1991. The kind of car that had cassette decks and manual windows you had to crank like you were opening a can of soup. I bought it used with my summer job money, and I used to think it made me cool. Mostly it made me nervous, but that was par for the course. Her name was Sophie. She had a crooked smile and a little scar on her cheek from falling off a tire swing as a kid. She was quiet, except when she laughed, which was often, usually at my expense. We'd been best friends since 9th grade, sat next to each other in history class, and bonded over how bored we both were. By the time we were 17, we were driving to diners at midnight, making mixtapes for each other, and pretending we weren't in love. Everyone else saw it. Our parents teased us. Our friends gave us just kiss already eyes, but we never did. And the reason I remember this one night so vividly is because it was the first time I nearly said it. The first time I love you made it all the way to the tip of my tongue and just stopped. We were parked behind the bowling alley, the one that stayed open late, and had those glowing pins and soda that tasted like chlorine. She was fiddling with her lighter, flipping it open and closed even though she didn't smoke. Her head was tilted toward the window, eyes on the streetlights. I was looking at her, and then she said, "Do you ever think about just leaving? Like getting in the car and not stopping?" I laughed, mostly to buy myself time. With gas prices, I barely made it here. She rolled her eyes, but she smiled. "I mean it. Just you and someone you trust. No plans, no school, just movement." That's when it almost happened. I looked at her and felt this ache, like the truth was swelling inside my chest, pressing up under my ribs. I wanted to say, "I'd go with you. I trust you. I love you." But instead, I just said, "Yeah, that'd be nice." She looked at me for a long second, then nodded and went back to her lighter. There are moments in life that don't seem important until years later, when you realize they were turning points disguised as throwaway nights. That was one of them. I still remember the song playing "Wish You Were Here" by Pink Floyd. I hated it, still do. Too slow, too sad. But she loved it, said it reminded her of childhood. After I dropped her off, I circled her block twice before going home, like I was trying to rewind the night. like maybe I could get a do-over. Just one more moment to say what I didn't. That night became a kind of ghost. It followed me to college, to first dates, and failed relationships. To the time I sent Sophie a wedding card 5 years later and felt sick for a week because that was the last time I saw her. After graduation, she moved to Colorado, married a guy who wore those chunky dad sandals and looked like he hiked for fun. I only saw pictures, one of her holding his hand on a mountaintop, smiling like the sky was hers. I stared at that photo for an hour. Not because I was still in love with her. I think that part had quieted by then, but because I knew I'd never said the thing that mattered when I had the chance. And I realized something that night, sitting on my apartment floor, clutching that card. I wasn't afraid she wouldn't love me back. I was afraid she would, and I wouldn't know what to do with that. Because love, in my head, always came with consequences, expectations, the need to be brave and present and emotionally competent. And let's be honest, none of those were exactly on my teenage resume. So I stayed quiet. I still do. Sometimes. The thing is, we tell ourselves we're protecting others by staying silent. But often, we're just protecting our own comfort. And silence, as safe as it feels in the moment, has a way of echoing forever, even now. Sometimes I dream about that car, that backseat, that moment, and I wonder what would have happened if I had just said it. Would she have smiled, laughed, cried? Would anything have changed? Or maybe the bigger question is, would I have changed? It's strange how you can grow up in a house full of words, but still not know how to say the ones that matter. My name's Tom. By the way, I probably should have mentioned that earlier. I'm 53 now. Semi-retired after 3 decades in corporate IT, which means I spend most days drinking too much coffee and pretending to fix my own dishwasher while secretly watching tutorials on YouTube. I've got a cat named Wilson who ignores me unless I open tuna. That's my life in a nutshell. But growing up, my house had its own weather system. Not violent, not loud, just always overcast. You know that thick kind of silence that sits in the corners and doesn't really go away. That was my childhood. My parents weren't bad people. My dad worked at the post office. My mom ran a little bookkeeping business out of the dining room. They provided. In the most technical sense of the word, I had clean clothes, bagged lunches, decent birthday gifts. But there was never warmth, never affection, never, "I'm proud of you," or "I see you," and "I love you." Forget it. That phrase was reserved for Hallmark cards and sitcoms in our house. Love was a quiet assumption like, if you were still allowed to live there, you were loved. Case closed. I remember once, when I was maybe 12, I scraped my knee real bad falling off my bike. Blood everywhere. And I limped into the kitchen sobbing. My mom looked up from her calculator, handed me a paper towel, and said, "It's just skin. Go rinse it." She wasn't cruel, just practical. Feelings weren't things we dwelled on. Looking back, I think both of my parents were carrying their own ghosts. My dad was a Korean war vet, and sometimes I'd catch him staring at the walls like they were going to move. My mom never talked about her family at all. Not once. It was like she materialized into adulthood with a full mortgage and no backstory. So I learned the rules early. Don't cry. Don't ask for hugs. Don't say too much. Don't ask why nobody says I love you. And by the time I was a teenager, those rules were baked in like muscle memory. Even with Sophie, as close as we were, I held back. I told her everything about school, movies, music. I told her I liked her hair better when it was messy. I even told her about the time I cheated on a math quiz and felt so guilty I threw up. But I love you never crossed my lips because in my head, saying it made you vulnerable, made you needy. And I'd rather be a million other things than needy. Funny thing is, I didn't realize until much later that being emotionally numb doesn't make you strong. It makes you unavailable. And people, good people, will eventually stop trying to reach someone who's always hiding behind polite smiles and I'm fines. I carried that into adulthood, even in my relationships. I dated here and there in college. But every time things got serious, I'd pull away. I'd start finding flaws, tiny little things that gave me an excuse to leave. Like, oh, she talks during movies, or she organizes her books by color, which okay. Still weird, but not exactly a deal breaker. But it was easier to focus on quirks than face the bigger truth. I didn't know how to be emotionally honest. I didn't know how to say, I care about you, or even scarier, I need you. I had this girlfriend, once Mara. We dated for a year. She was kind, sharp, funny in that dry, deadpan way I always loved. One time, I caught the flu, and she brought me soup and ginger ale, and sat on my floor reading aloud from some ridiculous self-help book just to make me laugh. And I remember thinking, in that exact moment, this is what love feels like. But did I tell her? Nope, not even close. I joked about how terrible the soup smelled, then changed the subject to weather. We broke up 6 weeks later. She said something about me being emotionally distant. I said something about needing space. It was all very mature, very civil, very empty. She deserved better. So did I. Probably. But I didn't know how to ask for it. I wonder sometimes, what if I'd grown up in a house where people said I love you over dinner? Or after phone calls? Or just because they felt it? Would I have turned out different? Would I have said it more easily? More often? Or maybe I would have just found a new way to be scared of it? Hard to say. But one thing I do know, when you're taught that feelings are fragile, you spend most of your life walking on emotional eggshells, even in your own heart. And some of those eggs never hatch. There's a particular kind of guilt that comes with rereading a message you never sent. That little blinking cursor staring back at you, like it's waiting for you to grow up and be brave for once. I've had more one-sided conversations with that damn cursor than I've had with most of my family. Typed, deleted, typed again, backspace, start over. That's the dance. It started with Sophie, of course. We were 22 the first time I typed, I love you in a message. It was the summer after college, and we'd stayed in touch here and there, just enough to blur the line between nostalgia and unfinished business. One night, we were texting about some indie film she'd seen, something with subtitles and lots of close-ups, probably French. I remember the way she used to recommend things, like each film or book was this personal gift. Like, if you love this too, then maybe we're still connected. I was lying on my futon, half drunk on leftover wine, and my fingers just moved. Like muscle memory from a dream I didn't know I'd had. I typed, you know I love you. Right. Then I stared at it, and stared, and deleted it. Because what if she didn't say it back? Or worse, what if she did? That sounds backward. I know. But if you've ever been afraid of being loved for real, you know what I mean. There's comfort in not being seen fully. You can control the image, Stay safe in your own fog. I sent her a meme instead. Something stupid. A cat playing a piano. She replied with a laughing emoji, then told me she was heading to bed. I put my phone down and told myself I dodged a bullet. But I didn't sleep. That was the first of many. There was Kara Sweet. Sunflower-hearted Kara. She loved long drives, got too excited at farmers markets, and cried at commercials. We dated for almost 2 years. We had a shared grocery list, a drawer at each other's places, and even started looking at apartments together. One night, after a beach day that left us sunburned and salty-haired, we sat on my couch and watched some awful rom-com with Jennifer Lopez in it. I don't even remember the title, but she leaned into my shoulder and said, out of nowhere, I love you, and I kissed her forehead and said, I really like this version of you. She laughed, but it broke something. I didn't send her a text that night, but I thought about it. I typed out, I love you too, just slowly, and I stared at it for 10 whole minutes. I didn't send it. I convinced myself I needed more time, but really, I was just afraid I didn't know how to feel things cleanly without panic attaching itself to every tender word. I got really good at using excuses. Timing, work stress, not wanting to ruin the moment. Sometimes I'd even open the Messages app, type the 3 words, then shut my phone off like it had burned me. And sometimes I'd go back later, reread what I wrote, and feel like a fraud, like I was practicing love, but never performing it. There's one. I still think about Eva. She wasn't even someone I dated, just a friend. The kind of friend who shows up when your car won't start, or when your dad goes to the hospital and you don't know how to cry. We'd sit in her kitchen at 1 a.m., eating cereal out of mugs, and talking about things neither of us knew how to name. She was light and brutal honesty all at once. And one night, she hugged me goodbye, and I felt this strange, overwhelming tenderness, like gratitude and longing got tangled up and turned into something else. When I got home, I typed, "You make life feel less hard. I love you," and deleted it before I even finished reading it over. We drifted a few months later. No big fight, just fewer texts, less silence-filled. Maybe she got tired of waiting for someone who never named what he felt. She deserved better than a blinking cursor. I've saved some of the drafts, though maybe out of punishment, maybe to remember that I did feel things I just never followed through. Funny thing is, I've always been articulate. Words are my job, my tools. I've written resignation letters, wedding speeches, even a eulogy for my old neighbor, Mr. Delgado. I know how to write feeling, just not that feeling, not for myself. Because I Love You isn't about elegance. It's about exposure. It's the emotional equivalent of standing naked in the snow and hoping someone hands you a coat. And that has always terrified me. What if they don't? What if they do? And I don't know how to wear it. That's the problem with drafts. They give you the illusion of progress, but they're just well-written cowardice. And I was full of them. There was one time I actually said it out loud, fully, clearly, no joke trailing behind, no sarcasm to mask it. I said I love you, and I meant it, and it broke something in me. Her name was Nicole. She had this laugh that could talk you down from any rooftop you'd climbed out onto, metaphorically and probably literally. She was brave in ways I wasn't. The kind of woman who'd send the risky text, make the first move, show up with a bag of snacks and a blanket when life got cold. We were together for a year. maybe a little less. The kind of relationship that starts hot and fast, everything feels like a promise. The kind where you both try to outcook the other. She won every time. To this day, I still can't make chili without remembering the way hers made my nose run and my heart do that weird squeeze. We had this night. It was raining, which is such a cliche, but I swear it was. The kind of rain that taps the windows like it wants to come in. We were watching some old noir movie. She had her feet in my lap, a glass of wine in one hand, and she was humming along to the music in the background. And I just said it. I love you. 3 words. Simple. Steady. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She smiled. A little sadly. She said, I know. And that was it. Not I love you. 2. Not even hesitation. Just I know. Like I'd told her something she already mourned. I felt like someone had scooped the air out of the room. It's funny when people talk about heartbreak. They picture shouting, maybe a door slam, a long email, or a tearful confession. But heartbreak can be that quiet, that gentle, that final. We didn't break up that night. We drifted over a few weeks. Conversations started thinning. We fought about small things, groceries, scheduling, the tone of a text, but it was already decided. Really, she'd been waiting for me to feel what she felt. And I did. Too late. One night, she left a note on my kitchen counter. Take care of yourself. Okay? And the spare key sitting on top. That was the end. I didn't reply. What was there to say? I still had her number saved under Nico until last year. I never texted, never called. But I'd scroll past it sometimes and feel this thud in my chest. Not pain. Exactly. More like shame. That was the moment I stopped saying it out loud for years. Like the words themselves were cursed. Like they carried too much weight and not enough magic. I started thinking of I love you like a kind of weapon or a test. You say it, and you're just waiting to see what gets taken away next. Maybe that's dramatic, but that's how it felt. And yeah, I know I was the common denominator in all those failures. There's a reason I kept getting to the edge and turning back. I didn't trust it. Not the words, not the feeling, not myself. Because if you really let it in love, I mean, you don't get to control the damage. It's not safe. It's not clever. It's not something you can revise like a draft or walk back like a joke. And I'm good at safe. I'm great at clever, but not at real. Not then. I started dating people where I love you was never on the table. Situationships, flings, people who made it clear from day one that this was casual. I told myself I liked it better that way. No risk, no expectation, but it wears on you. Like wearing shoes half a size too small. You get used to the ache, but you don't run anymore. And meanwhile, everyone around me kept saying it on phone calls and photos on comment threads. Love you, like it was just another way to say hi. I envied that. Still do. A little, because they didn't look afraid. I remember once sitting at a diner, eavesdropping on the booth behind me. A guy, probably early 20s, was telling his friend about a breakup. And he said, I told her I loved her, and she just didn't say it back. Then he laughed. Laughed. Not a bitter laugh, a what can you do kind of laugh. And I wanted to tap him on the shoulder and ask, how did you do that? How did you not fall apart? But I didn't. I just paid for my coffee and left a tip big enough to feel generous. That night, I opened up a notes app and typed, "I love you, I love you, I love you." Just that. Over and over. I didn't send it to anyone, but I wanted to. God, I wanted to. Her name was Elena. If Nicole was the storm, Elena was the still water, those deep, silent kinds of people who don't need to fill a room to be unforgettable. She had a way of listening that made you feel like the only voice in the world. No rush, no pressure, just presence. We met in our late 30s, me freshly burned out from a startup job I'd clung to for too long. Her a physical therapist with hands that probably held more emotion than most people's mouths. She didn't push. She didn't ask questions too soon, which was its own kind of seduction. Really, she never once asked me to say it. That's what gets me, even now. We dated for 2 years, lived together for 1, built routines, little things like Sunday eggs with too much paprika, or folding laundry together, while old soul music played on a tinny Bluetooth speaker. She knew my dry cleaning schedule better than I did, knew how I liked my tea lukewarm and too sweet, like I had a vendetta against adulthood. I think she loved me more than I was willing to admit, and I think part of her was always waiting. It's hard to explain the kind of waiting that happens in silence. She didn't stare at me when I said goodnight. Easy. She didn't linger after I hugged her. But it was there, in the way she'd watch me when I wasn't looking, or the way she'd quietly pause in the doorway before leaving for work, as if each time was a test. Once, she got a little drunk at a party. We were outside on the porch with paper cups of sangria and terrible folding chairs. She leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "You know, I think we're the lucky ones." I asked her why. She shrugged, facing the wind with her cup. "Because we found this, whatever this is." And I remember thinking right then that I should say it, right now. Do it. Tell her you love her. She deserves that. But instead I said, "Yeah, we are lucky." I'm not even sure why. Fear, probably. Or maybe habit, like I was holding on to my last chip, terrified that if I put it all on the table, the dealer would just shake his head. She nodded, smiled, didn't press, but something shifted that night. Something internal. She didn't bring up the future anymore. She stopped leaving sticky notes with hearts on the fridge. You'd think I'd be relieved. I was the one who flinched at sentiment, right? But it felt like someone turned off the music mid-song. We stayed together another few months. I think both of us were waiting for something me, for a feeling I could guarantee, her, for a word I wouldn't give. She finally asked one night, quietly, in the kitchen while washing mugs. No eye contact. "Do you love me?" My heart did this slow, exhausted turn, like it had been woken up mid-nap, and I couldn't answer. I didn't lie, but I didn't speak, which is maybe worse. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just nodded again. That same quiet nod she gave when someone else might have screamed and said, "Okay." That okay will haunt me longer than any argument ever could. She moved out 2 weeks later, took her books, her plants, her vintage lamp that always made our living room glow like a Wes Anderson movie. She didn't ask me to help her pack. I offered anyway. She said no. The last thing she said, standing there in the doorway with her car already running, was, "You don't have to say it, but I hope someday you feel safe enough to." And that cracked me, because I realized she hadn't wanted the words for herself. She wanted them for me. She wanted me to know what it was like to not be afraid of my own heart. I walked back inside after she left and sat in our now too quiet living room. I stared at her mug on the table, still half full, still warm, and I whispered it. I love you to no one, to the room, to the past version of her that used to dance in the kitchen with her socks half off. I didn't text her, didn't call. I thought maybe someday I'd run into her again and say it properly. But life doesn't always offer reruns. So yeah, she waited for the words, and I kept them like hoarded treasure, too scared to spend them. Now, I catch myself doing little things I used to do for her, buying her brand of tea, humming her favorite song without meaning to, telling my friends to call their partners and say what they mean while they still can. Funny, isn't it? Sometimes the people we can't love out loud are the ones who teach us how. There's one text that still sits in my phone, unsent, dated November 19th, 3 years ago. I remember writing it. I was sitting in my car, parked outside my childhood home. The engine was off. The windshield fogged up from my own breath. I hadn't been inside yet. I was just sitting there, reading her obituary again and again like it would change if I refreshed the page. Her name was Claire, my cousin. But more than that, she was the first person who ever told me it was okay to feel things deeply. She used to say, "Your heart's a loud one. You just wear earmuffs." She was only 2 years older than me, but always felt decades wiser. We used to trade music back and forth cassette tapes, later burned CDs, then playlists. She once made me a mix titled Songs to Cry to When You Pretend You Don't Cry. It had Bon Iver, some Sufjan Stevens, and one French song she said was about falling in love with a ghost. We lost touch, gradually, not on purpose, just the slow erosion of adulthood, different cities, jobs, relationships, obligations. But she always texted me on my birthday, always. Even last year, that last text, it was simple. Still love your stubborn ass. Call me sometime. I never called. I thought I had time. That's the tragic illusion, right? That people stay on the shelf, waiting for you to be ready. The morning I found out, I was eating toast, multi-grain, dry as sin. I nearly choked when my mom called. Her voice cracked and said Claire had been in an accident, gone before the ambulance even showed up. It didn't feel real. Still doesn't, if I'm honest. I drove to the house where her parents were. Her room still had her posters, up Radiohead, an old clipped print, a sticky note on the mirror that said, "Be ferocious." I sat on her bed and opened my phone. I typed, "I love you. Always did. Always will. I'm sorry I never said it when you were here." Then I stared at the screen. There's no send button for the dead. I cried like a kid, like the world had kicked out the floorboards under me. And in that moment, I wasn't a grown man with a steady job and a mortgage. I was just a scared, selfish person who thought love had infinite opportunities to be said. Claire didn't need me to say it. That's not the point. The point is, I needed to say it. Because loving someone in silence is a kind of self-imposed exile. You carry them around like a secret backpack always there, never unpacked. I scrolled through our old messages, rereading the way she used too many emojis, how she always sent memes 2 weeks late, like she was catching up to the internet, how she once texted, "Tell someone you love them today." And no, pizza doesn't count. That one hit me in the ribs. I remember going to her memorial, standing at the back because I didn't feel like I deserved a front row seat in her story. Her brother read something she wrote in a notebook years ago. It said, "We wait too long. We love too late. But I hope the people I loved never doubted it, even if I couldn't always say it right." I wanted to raise my hand and shout. I doubted, but only because I didn't say it back. I just cried. And after everyone had left, I walked up to her photo and whispered, "I love you. Claire, you were right about me, but I'm trying to be less afraid now." Since then, I've kept that text in my phone. It's not for her anymore. It's for me. A reminder, a scar. Sometimes I open it and stare at it before writing something vulnerable to someone new, like armor or a vow. Because what I learned in that car, on that cold day, with my phone glowing blue in my hand, is that regret is not just about what we did. It's about what we never said. And trust me, silence is louder than any "I love you" could ever be. It was a Tuesday morning when I finally hit send. Nothing dramatic happened. No big music swell, no lightning bolt of courage. Just quiet. That kind of early morning hush when the streetlights are still on, but the sun is beginning to peek through. The sky looked washed out, like an overused watercolor palette. I was sitting at the kitchen table in sweatpants, unshaven, sipping coffee that had already gone lukewarm. I hadn't slept well, dreamt I was underwater, trying to say something, but every word turned into a bubble and floated away. The text was to Dani. I've mentioned her before back in section 6, when I said she waited patiently for words I never gave. Dani was different. Not the kind of different you throw around to sound poetic, but actually different. She made being around her feel like rest, not excitement, not anxiety, just rest. And maybe that's why I was scared. Because when you're used to love feeling like a roller coaster, something calm can feel suspicious. Like, what's the catch? Why aren't we crashing into something right now? But that morning, my fear didn't win. I opened our last conversation. It had been a few months. Our messages had dwindled from daily to weekly to that awkward digital silence that just sort of hums between two people who still care but don't know what to do with that care anymore. She had sent me a photo a while back, some flowers blooming in her garden, and I'd replied with a thumbs up. A thumbs up, like I was reacting to a company memo. So I typed, "I've been carrying this a long time. I know I didn't say it before, and I know it might be too late, but I love you. I don't expect anything back. I just needed you to know." Then I stared at it for 10 minutes. My thumb hovered. I reread it, considered softening it with a joke, maybe something like, "Don't worry, I'm not dying," or adding a meme to make it more casual. That's the thing about vulnerability. It never feels quite safe to just leave it raw. But I didn't dress it up. I just sent it, and immediately wanted to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I walked into the kitchen, started unloading the dishwasher. Plates clanked louder than usual. I kept glancing at the screen, waiting for the typing bubble to appear like a rescue helicopter. Nothing. An hour passed. I pretended to work, opened a spreadsheet, typed my name into 3 different cells, and convinced myself that counted as productivity. Then, my phone lit up. "Dani," one line I always knew, but it's still so good to hear. I sat down right there on the kitchen floor and let out this weird mix between a laugh and a sob, like my body couldn't decide which response was appropriate. So it went with both. It wasn't a confession followed by a romantic reunion. It wasn't a movie scene, but it was honest and received. And that made all the difference. Later that evening, she sent another message. I used to rehearse saying it, you know. But I thought if I said it first, I'd ruin whatever this was. And I replied, funny. I thought the same thing. We'd both been quiet for the same reason. Scared that saying the thing would break the thing. Turns out, not saying it just let it fade away. Quietly and without ceremony. We ended up talking for hours that night. Not about the past, we didn't need to dissect it like a science project, but about who we were now. She had started painting again. I had finally finished that shelf I'd been talking about for years. Small things, but real things. And somewhere between Spotify links and blurry photos of her cat, I realized something loving someone doesn't always mean you get a second chance. Sometimes it just means you finally chose to tell the truth. I didn't feel fixed. I didn't feel heroic. But I did feel lighter. And in a world that asks us to carry so much, feeling a little lighter is worth everything. That night, I wrote "I love you" on a Post-it and stuck it to the inside of my sock drawer. Not for anyone else, just for me. A quiet reminder that saying it even late is better than never at all. The reply I didn't expect came a few days later, from someone else entirely. It was my sister, Leah. We hadn't been close in years. Not since Mom passed, and the grief made everything between us go stiff and awkward. Like we were both holding a broken vase and blaming the other for dropping it. She texted me at 9:47 p.m. on a Friday. I remember the exact time because I had just microwaved some leftover lasagna and burned the roof of my mouth like a complete amateur. Classic Friday night dignity. The message was short. Hey, I heard from Dani. She said you finally told her. I'm glad. I'm really glad. I blinked. Sat there with my fork hovering halfway to my mouth. Not because I was surprised that Dani and Leah still talked. Those two had always been tight, but because of what came next. I've been waiting for you to say it. To anyone. To yourself. And that was the moment it hit me. This wasn't just about Dani, or ex-girlfriends, or the perfect moment I never took. This was about how I'd lived for years without letting the people I loved know I loved them, not because I didn't feel it, but because I'd spent so long believing that silence was safer. I stared at Leah's text for a while, then typed, I love you. She replied, took you long enough. Dummy. I smiled so wide my face actually hurt. It was the kind of smile that starts behind your ribs, somewhere quiet, and spreads without permission. Here's what I hadn't realized. People are waiting, not for flowers or grand gestures, or handwritten letters scented with cologne and desperation. Just for honesty, a moment where the air clears, and someone says the thing that's been stuck between them like invisible glass. I love you. It's not a spell. It doesn't fix broken years or rewrite past absences. But it opens something, a little door, a crack of light after that night. I started saying it more. First to Leah, then to my buddy James when we got drinks, and he told me his dad was sick. He froze, blinked 3 times, and said, huh? Love you too. Man. Then he immediately took a bite of his burger, so neither of us had to look at each other directly. Men. Right. Then I said it to myself, out loud, alone in my car. Just, I love you. Felt weird. not gonna lie, but it also felt deserved. I realized I had been waiting for someone else to make me feel worthy of love before I let myself say it. As if love had to be earned, not given freely. That belief, it robbed me of years, of moments I'll never get back. But that belief cracked the moment I hit send to Dani, and it shattered when my sister called me a dummy and said it back. That's the thing. Love isn't a performance. It's not a perfectly typed sentence or a voice note with the right inflection. Sometimes it's just showing up with your whole heart, messy, unsure, but real. I still hesitate sometimes. The muscle memory of silence is strong. There are moments when I reach for the phone and stop myself. Moments when I feel the old whisper of, what if they don't say it back? But that whisper doesn't win anymore. Not always. The truth is, people don't always say it back. Some never will. But I've learned it's not about control. It's about clarity. Like I told Dani in that message, I don't expect anything back. I just needed you to know. And once I started saying it, something strange happened. I started hearing it more. From people I didn't think noticed me. From places I didn't expect. In the silence of a late-night drive with my nephew. When he just rested his head on my shoulder and sighed. In the way my dad, who never said it growing up, now signs every email with love, Dad. Like it's a new language he's just learning. I wish I'd started sooner. Of course I do. But I also know that now is better than never. Now. I say it when I mean it. I don't wait for the perfect moment, or the birthday card, or the hospital bed. I say it on a Tuesday, in the middle of microwaving lasagna. I say it when it's hard, and especially when it's easy. Because it took me 47 years, 3 broken relationships, and a text message I nearly didn't send to realize love isn't supposed to live in your throat. It's supposed to breathe. Now I say it aloud. It's become a quiet ritual. Really, not dramatic or performative. Just mine, just present. At 53, I've found that love real. Stubborn. Everyday love shows up most in the pauses, in the ordinary. I say I love you when I hand someone a coffee, when I offer to drive a friend to the airport before sunrise, when I sit next to my sister on the porch and listen, really listen, even when she's telling me the same story for the 4th time. And yes, I say the actual words more now, aloud, without needing a holiday, a crisis, or a lowercase I in a blinking text box. I've said it to Dani since in person. We met for coffee last fall, neutral ground. She looked just the same, but also different, stronger, softer. Her hair was longer, and her smile was a little slower to arrive, but it landed just the same. And when I said it, right there, in the little coffee shop next to the record store we used to haunt, she just nodded. Thanks, she said. That's really good to hear. And that was it. No fireworks, no rekindled love affair, just mutual warmth, and a sense that we'd each finally stepped into our full truths. I didn't need anything more. For once. Love didn't come with conditions or confusion or even hope. It just was. That's something I never understood when I was younger. I thought love had to go somewhere, had to build towards something in a relationship, a future, a promise. But now, I know it can just be. You can love someone and not be with them. You can love someone and let them go. You can love someone and never speak to them again. But you should still say it, because love unspoken doesn't disappear. It just sits there in your gut. It hardens. It waits. And honestly, I've done enough waiting in this life. I've started saying it to my son, too. He's 23, in that weird stage between college and figuring out what kind of man he wants to be. He always gives me that sheepish, almost embarrassed grin when I say it. But he says it back now, quietly, like it's still growing in his mouth. I know that look. I wore it once. We were driving home from a hardware store last week. He needed a new drill, and I pretended to know what half the parts were for. And as he got out of the car, I just said, "Love you, kiddo." And he paused, nodded. "Love you too, Dad." No hesitation. I sat there for a minute longer in the car. The windows were fogged a little, and the seat warmer was still on, even though it was nearly 70 outside. But I didn't move. Just let it sit in the air. That one line, because when it's said out loud, when it lands, when someone hears it and doesn't flinch, it rewrites everything that came before. I don't text "I love you" because I'm afraid anymore. I don't hesitate. I don't wait until I'm drunk, or heartbroken, or facing mortality. I send it when someone needs to hear it, or when I do. Sometimes I still draft and delete old habits die hard, but more often than not, I just send the thing, like dropping a little stone into a still pond, not caring how far the ripples go, only that they start. There's a strange peace in that. I used to think love was supposed to be big, loud, all-consuming, but the older I get, the more I believe it's what's left behind after the fire goes out. The soft glow, the ember, the way someone still answers the phone when you call. "I love you," 3 words. Harder to text than to say, for me, but also a lot more durable than I ever gave them credit for. These days, I whisper them even when no one is around, sometimes to old memories, sometimes to the night air, and occasionally to myself, because we all deserve to hear it, especially from the one voice we carry with us always. So if you're still here, thank you. Thank you for letting me say all of this, for letting me tell the truth about something so small on the surface, but something that carried so much weight for so long. I don't know who you need to say it to, or if you'll say it tonight, or tomorrow, or not for another 10 years. But maybe, just maybe, you'll let yourself feel it. Let it soften something inside you. Let it move, even if just a little. Maybe you'll text someone you haven't spoken to in a while. Maybe you'll whisper it to the ceiling fan at 2 a.m. Or maybe you'll just sit there and think about all the times you wish you had. It's okay. You're not late. You're right on time. That's the thing about love. It doesn't expire. It just waits. Patient. Quiet. Like a light left on in a hallway you thought no one ever walked through anymore. And it's never too late to walk down that hall again. So wherever you are, whatever time it is, I hope you feel just a little less alone tonight. I love you. You're worth saying it to. Sleep well.